Are meetings getting in your way to get work done? Stick around, I think I can help you with that. Hi all, my name is José. I'm a Portuguese designer living and working in Ontario, Canada. And for the past few months I've noticed an increasing amount of designers online complaining about their lack of time to design. Because often they have a packed agenda full of meetings and with very little time to actually design. If they're lucky, they have a couple of blocks of an hour or less here and there. This is nothing new though. I've been there. I've seen designers complain about this throughout my entire career. And I've done it too. I've also seen managers trying to address the problem. I've had meetings about having too many meetings, and funny enough, the outcome of that was actually spending even more time discussing it in smaller groups, trying to fix the problem. And sure, managers have their fair share of accountability. After all, they are the ones booking most of the recurring meetings. But what about us? What about designers? Are we just passive victims of a system that is trying to drown us with meetings? No. If you don't have time to design, it's also your fault. But I'm not here to point any fingers. As a designer, I don't like to just find problems, I like to fix them. So that's why in this video I want to share with you 7 tips that helped me gain some of my time back from the meeting overlords. And I hope they can help you too. The first one is to block your calendar. Here's your first mistake. If your calendar looks something like this for the next month, what do you think those empty spaces communicate? It looks to me that you're pretty open, and I can book anytime I want, and before you know it, your calendar gets packed. To avoid this, you can simply block slots of at least 2 to 4 hours where you want to design. Just call it what it is, design time, and be strict. Don't accept meetings that overlap that, unless it's something important or exceptional. Don't block your entire calendar though, otherwise it will give you the same exact result as if it was empty. If people want to book time with you, you should have slots that people can actually use for that. Otherwise, they will see your design time as the closest thing to an empty block, and they will try their luck. At Shopify, Wednesdays are meant to be a meeting-free day. Everyone is encouraged to avoid booking meetings on that day, and they also empower you to decline any invite that pops on a Wednesday. That mandate comes from our leadership, and I'm really a fan. I guess it shows that they were makers and they understand that people actually need time to get stuff done. So if Shopify can do this, I don't see why other companies can't. Now, if you don't think you can carve such a big block of time out of any of your days, please tell me why in the comments, because I would love to learn. You don't even have to wait for your company. You can always start small and aim to do something like this within your team. If your company is set up in a way that you just can't actually reserve a day or a big chunk of a day to work, the least you can do is try to push for it. Because inertia won't give you that time back. And I would be very surprised if someone calls you out for trying to get more work done. Tip number 2, don't be afraid to decline meetings. Here's the thing, I'm pretty sure that a company doesn't want to pay you to have superfluous meetings, or at least they shouldn't. If you decline a meeting because the work you need to do has priority over it, you're actually doing them a favor. They shouldn't punish or reprimand you for that. Unfortunately, me saying that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen. if your company or lead discourages you from getting work done in favor of some of these superfluous meetings, maybe you should just reconsider your working situation and look for a place or a team that cares more about getting stuff done than just talking about it. And all this should come with a caveat that you need to make sure that the work you're doing actually has priority over the meeting you're declining. It's easy to put all meetings in the same bucket, but you need to be able to differentiate and understand that the context you gather in a meeting might actually save you hours of design time. My tip number 3 is to just propose a new time. This is actually a feature of calendars I don't see many people using often. It's a good way to defend your craft time and still be present in the meetings you don't want to miss. This might not work so well for meetings with a large group, but for smaller crowds it's probably fine, and you can probably leverage that as a way to shape what your design time is. Sometimes all it takes is just delaying a meeting for an hour and voila, you have a couple hours in a row for you to get your design on. My tip number 4 is to respect your time. If you're booking a meeting and you respect your audience's time, it's important that you define an agenda and goal for that meeting, and then make that part of the invite, because that can help your audience decide whether or not they need to attend. But it also puts you in a position where you can start requesting the same from others. If someone wants to take a slot of your calendar, they should at least put a minor effort in telling you what's that all about. If they don't, you can always defer to tip number 2. Another thing, when you actually have a meeting, try to get straight into business. It's perfectly normal and actually nice in the current times to start a meeting with a bit of an icebreaker. I'm not discouraging that. What I'm discouraging is spending more than just a couple of minutes just chit-chatting. Because the usual consequence of doing this is meetings that run over time, and need for subsequent meetings to continue the discussion, not to mention the domino effect that affects all your other meetings. In my experience, this often happens when meetings are low stakes. I don't see it happening as often when you have a high level stakeholder in the room. Why is that? Because people respect their time, so just ask yourself, why don't you respect your own time? And the same goes for the end of the meeting. If you end early, don't feel like you have to hang around and use that time that was left to talk. It's your time, use it wisely. My tip number 5 is don't start your day by diving straight into Slack or by tidying up your inbox. It's not common for people to book meetings early in the morning, at least in the places where I've worked. So if that's the case for you too, take advantage of that by making it your design time. You can check Slack messages or email in the short blocks you might have free during the day. If you have 30 minutes or even an hour in between 2 meetings, it's not likely that you'll be able to make a lot of progress if you start designing something. So use that time for Slack and email instead of the golden hours of the morning. Fear of missing out? I've had days where I was so focused on the work that I was doing that I totally forgot to check Slack or my email. Did I miss anything? No. If there's something urgent, those things will find you. Just make sure you leave your notifications on Slack on for when people mention you. My tip number 6 is to take breaks. I know, this sounds very counterintuitive, but when you have a full day of meetings and just a couple hours to work, you might feel tempted just to go full on and not even stop to breathe. I touched a bit on this on an article that I wrote on Medium, where I mentioned the study where researchers found that there's an actual limit to the amount that a human being can concentrate on a single task, without a break. Apparently that's less than an hour, so you're not actually doing yourself or your employer any favor by working for several straight hours without taking a break. Even if you have only just a couple of hours to work, consider taking a break in the middle of it. Sometimes that is exactly what you need to unblock and have a breakthrough. With that said, I am not encouraging you to break your flow. If you are on a roll and you're plowing through your designs, just keep at it. Just be aware of your energy level and try to recognize when you can benefit from a short break. My tip number 7 is don't default to weekly. We've been experimenting with the 4-day work week for the summer at Shopify, and I've noticed that this actually forced people to rethink the way that some of the recurring meetings were planned. The default way is almost weekly, but have you ever wondered why? A week is essentially a made-up concept anyway, so why are we enforcing this cadence? My experience with weekly meetings is that often you have at least a couple of them and they end up landing on the same weekday, which ends up burning you out and leaving you without energy for actually getting work done on that particular day. Can you see how many hours we're wasting by doing this every week? Now, these meetings are usually for alignment and planning. To do these things on a bi-weekly cadence, you just need to adjust your planning and foster async alignment. You don't actually need to have everyone in a room every week to review work if your team is sharing and aligning independently of these recurring events. Actually, I noticed that having these recurring events sets a pace for sharing, which might not actually be the best one for your team. Maybe your project is at a stage where it could move so much faster if the team was sharing progress daily, but instead people wait for the weekly critic. And this isn't just about wasting time, it's also much more difficult for designers to let go from ideas that they were crafting for the entirety of a week as opposed to something that they did in a day. Those are my tips. Now, I don't know about you, but I can't design on demand. I have to be in the right mind space and actually have energy and especially time to make something meaningful. That's probably why designers complain so much about meetings. Now, if you want to make meaningful work, you're faced with a choice. You can either continue complaining about it and hope that someone comes and wipes your calendar clean, or you can take charge and own your time. As a designer, your job isn't just to make things. You need to gather the right amount of context to make those things, and you need to review them with your peers if you want to strive and make it better. And all of this can't be done properly if you're not even able to manage your own time. Now, as a way to conclude this, I'll leave you with one last story that hopefully serves as proof that the time is there to be carved out. Since COVID hit Canada, as many others, I've been stuck at home, working and parenting full time. My wife is also in the same boat, she is also a designer, so we had no choice but to adjust our schedules. I spent the mornings with my daughter, which means that I only started to work around 1 p.m., sometimes 2 p.m., which ultimately resulted in 4-ish hours of overlap with my team. With the help and understanding of my teammates, and after moving around some of our recurring meetings, we made it work. We leveraged tools that allowed us to keep the communication going, even if that was async, using things like Slack and Figma comments. One thing that helped me in particular was posting scrappy video demos running through my designs as a way to share my reasoning and my process, and also as a way to get feedback from my peers. Now, with all this, there was also a side benefit. All of a sudden, half of my week was automatically meeting free, and sometimes we even leveraged this to keep designs progressing. I would sync up with a designer and pick up the design exploration where she left off, and then before I sign off I would leave a few comments over the design so she could come back to it in the next morning. It does take a bit of effort, but if you're willing to take action, you can definitely make it work. And that's it for this one. These tips certainly helped me to get more time to design, and I hope you find this helpful. If you did, consider liking and subscribing, and leave a comment below if you have anything design related you'd like me to cover. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one. Bye!